inaugural, For the Culture, Voices of Black Agriculturalists and Conservationists. We are so thrilled to have you join us today. There are just a couple of housekeeping items that I would like to share with you to ensure that our conversation goes smoothly. After our panel today, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Please be sure to type your Q&A within the Q&A chat box. In order to be accessible as possible, we also have the option of you utilizing our closed captioning feature. So I want to kick this conversation off talking about that there are a mere 1.4 of total farm sales from Black farmers, right? When we think about what has agriculture meant throughout history in the Black community, whether it is your Medea or Ma Dukes or Big Mama having their own home garden, I want us to scale it down to talk about why is it that we need to have Black people in agriculture, and what made you interested in this work, and why is it so important to you? We want to kick this conversation off and start off with our Southwest Black ranchers. Thank you both for joining us. Why agriculture? Why is it important to the Black community? And why are you making it a priority in 2022 to run a 10-acre farm? Oh, we can't hear you. I think you may have to unmute or your device may be muted. One moment, we can't hear you. While they work on their audio, I'm gonna kick it on over to Dion. Dion, why Black agriculture? Why go back to school to learn how to really epitomize this work that is so necessary in our community?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the Desert Botanical Garden and particularly Kavina for asking us to be here today. I just learned this on the way back from Houston, Texas this week. I was riding with a fellow Nigerian, which is where my background is from, and the Bantu people, which is the tribe that I'm from. We were farmers. You know, in Africa, you have different tribes and they're responsible for different things, such as farming, fishing, and hunting. My tribe was responsible for farming. And so just learning that, I'm here sitting thinking, oh my gosh, it makes sense now. It makes sense why I chose this path. And really, it chose me. I got my degree in business. You know, I thought I was going to be, which I am, a WNBA agent and representing athletes in the league. But when COVID hit, we really wanted to do something special and we really wanted just to feed our people. We saw the disparities, not just in South Phoenix, but in Gary, Indiana, where my co-founder is from, Bridget Pettis. She had lost two sisters of just bad health, you know, just bad eating habits, no access to healthy food, no access to fresh water. I think they had a lead issue in Gary, Indiana. There was just so many reasons as to why we needed to do something different and pivot into the world of agriculture. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into in the very beginning. We had no idea how to farm. We learned, and my good friend Rodney over there came over several times to tell us what we were doing right and a lot of what we were doing wrong. And we just linked arms with the people next to us who have been doing this before us to get our mission fulfilled, which is just to nourish our community. And I think it's really important that our community see us doing that as such. And so again, I'm just really happy to be here. I can give you all the stats in the world and we'll talk about that later, but my heart is drawn to agriculture simply because I pride myself in feeding the community. I feel like that is my life's work now. I'm very grateful to share that opportunity with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dion. In that quest, like really tracing back to your lineage and where you're from to kind of see what does that mean to, like, what has it meant for our community historically, and what has it meant and how it still stands today, and why is it so relevant for us to sustain this? Rodney, why is agriculture so important in the Black community? Why did you get involved? What drew you near?
You know, it's similar to Dion. Part of it is a connection with identity, where you come from. So I started off when I was growing, my mom was very engaged in farming. So she actually trained me and my siblings to grow a couple acres by hand, whilst my dad was a gardener. So he did a lot of, vegetables, whilst my mom did a lot of crops. Interestingly, now I've switched I do a lot of vegetables that my dad was doing at the scale at what my mom was doing. So I sort of switched it. But coming more to what the bigger picture, what I do, what I'm doing. One of the ways that you can create the biggest vulnerability in any community across the world is you disengage them with their ability to make food, right? If you want to just cripple any people, do that, because there is nothing that is as much of a day. Well, I mean, air and water are a big daily need, but if you take away food from any people, they may have all the cell phones they need and so forth, so on. But with that, you would really harm a people, right? And so I've been very sensitive to the ever pending crisis. Even when I was doing my accounting, I did my accounting on a certain. I love accounting, I love math, I love those type of things. But I did that to understand the business, right? But then once I understand the business, I had to go back to what really create, the foundation. Even if we look at the rise of the United States, they talk about the agricultural revolution and then the industrial revolution, blah, blah, blah. Still, agriculture started earlier on. And so part of it is that we have a lot of our communities around the world that are now vulnerable. And I couldn't predict the kind of crisis that we're now in, with Ukraine being a bread basket across the world. And now any of the talking heads will tell you some of the most vulnerable, the people will be the most vulnerable with what's coming because of the shortages of fertilizer and multiple food coming from Ukraine are going to be the developing countries, where most of our minority groups, African Americans, Africans, Latin Americans, Asian Americans, they're going to suffer the most. So to me, it's that element of how do you empower our communities to go back and be able to tap and maybe control their own access of food, so that they can control their own destiny of their lives.
And I'm just listening and looking at everybody, all the panelists, and they're like, oh my God. And you talk about crippling the community. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this is like so relevant and so real. Before I move on to the next question, I'm just gonna hop and get the answer from the Southwest Ranchers. If you guys are ready to respond to the first question.
Can you hear me now?
Oh my God, you brilliant. We hear you, we feel you.
All right, so with me, I don't really have that history of being in agriculture, but when the pandemic hit, I was able to see what the food system was, the reality in its face, and the effects it had on me directly. And this is just, a quick hot flash of what I feel is to come. That's the primary reason I ended up getting into it, is to be able to support, providing food. And in our case, it's going to be proteins. I feel that the direction we went in, we definitely, I feel, as a whole, lack in the livestock category. There's a lot of production that could be done in livestock. There's a lot of money in livestock. So I want to be able to encourage others to be able to learn livestock and actually get rule and be able to do more there. The importance of it, I mean, it's the most important industry on the planet. That's how I feel. I mean, basically, it doesn't matter how much money you go make, what you go do, what you go build, what you create, you're still coming back to this. That's where everything starts. We have to have it. We have to have food. And as Black people, and when we talk about equality and all of that, if we don't create a footprint in the largest industry on the planet, how could we ever even talk about that honestly? If we go and do any other thing, it's creating a footprint in agriculture creates a sense of control. We have control of our foods. We have control when things go down. We have local growers where we can get food from. Population, let's look at population. The population, the 98% of the farmers is going to be dropping very soon. 2050, the Latino population will be the #1 population in this country. The Asian population is going to grow, and I hate to keep saying it, but the Black population always stays the same for some reason. That statistic just never seems to really move, but it didn't go down, so that's a good thing. So by taking the people that are that 2% of the farmers and ranchers and being able to bolster that area of agriculture is going to be what's needed for sustainability and actual real food in the future. Heirs, nobody's taking over farms no more, so we need to create new farmers and ranchers, which, there's plenty of opportunity right now as well. So that's kind of where I feel the importance is just representation getting control, taking control of our lives, like
Sovereignty.
food sovereignty. So like say when they cut the gym and took my chicken, what was I supposed to do? You know, it's like that's what I eat, and I going away line for food boxes and stuff. I don't think that's the best route for everybody. I think getting more people to grow, especially coming from our communities, because there's a lot of opportunities to make changes in our lives when we have a lot of areas we looking to improve overall. So that is a route that we just never look at, and that's kind of why we're here to, you know, expose that route and show that there's other ways to do it. Show that we can go back to the rural areas from the city, even if you don't have experience.
I appreciate that. That's real. I'm gonna dive into the next question. Keisha, I want you to answer this first question for us, but I also want you to, also take the time to answer the first question, like, why do we need Black people in agriculture? What made you, Keisha, what made you be interested? But the question is what is a food desert? What is it? We kind of talked about it, we tapped into it because all of this intersects with one another. But when you think about living in the food desert, like, how does that affect a person or a family's food choices?
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. So I'll try to answer the first question. I'll give the government answer to the food desert question. And then if everyone else, because there are different definitions of food desert. So I'm here in my official capacity. And so first, why is agriculture important to our people, and what made me get an interest in agriculture, and why did I pursue a career in agriculture? So I'm going to be very frank. I grew up definitely in a rural, very, very proud to be country. Sometimes people think that's a embarrassment, but I'm a very proud country girl. And if you say anything about that, we're going to have a problem. So I'm very proud to have that rural background. And I grew up in Southampton County, Virginia, the home of Nat Turner, where it's just cotton, peanuts, and corn everywhere. And so I didn't grow up farming, but I have it's in my family lineage. So my parents still live on the land that my great grandfather, where we grew hogs and had row crops. And so it wasn't a foreign thing for me, but I had this mentality, I think, as a lot of, I'm not picking cotton. We don't do that anymore. And so I really didn't have a lot of interest in it, but it had always been in me. My parents, we always had something growing all the time. We grew a lot of our own foods. And I had Aunt Jenny. I got to give a shout out to my Aunt Jenny, who was just loved the land and did a whole lot with me and my sister and any child that could come around to her place. You coming to Aunt Jenny's house, you doing some manual labor. And this is not on the tractor either. We talk about with the hoe and pulling, picking apples and composting. And so I had that in me, but what made the final decision, and I'm gonna just be real, it was the most scholarships in agriculture. I was poor. I was from a very poor rural area, and I did not know how I was gonna pay for college. And when I started doing the research on where the fields of study were, where I could find the most money, agriculture just kept coming up. Like in my sophomore and junior year, it was an abundance of resources. And I took an FFA class, Future Farmers of America, a FFA class in high school, and I was sold. And I said, yep, this is my career. I'm going to do this. And then what made me go into government, because I think we need to talk about that, is the relationship that people of color have with government. And I really feel an intense responsibility in my role as a government representative. I work for USDA, and it's not always a bad word. And part of my role, in addition to addressing the natural resources, is to help rebuild some trust with African Americans and other peoples of color with the government, because your taxpayer dollar does pay for a lot of these programs that are available for farmers and ranchers across the country. And so why not take advantage of them? And sometimes they can be complicated, and sometimes there can be a lot of red tape, and sometimes we need help with someone kind of guiding us along the process. And it just helps to have representation in all phases of the industry. And so in agriculture, we need more than we need growers. We need lots of growers. But we need more than growers. There's a whole industry and ecosystem surrounding agriculture that we need to have representation in all of those spaces. So I kind of represent not the grower, but also other parts of the industry as well. So that answers the how and the why and why we should be doing it. And on the food desert side, so there is an official USDA response, and it's not a USDA alone. So USDA, Treasury, and Health and Human Services kind of have come together to look at what is a food desert and define it. And it's by two particular factors, either low income and low access, and there are thresholds for each. So if a family, if your poverty rates of 20% or greater, or a third of the population in a particular area lives more than a mile from a supermarket or a large grocery store, then it can be classified, is usually classified as a food desert. And it's by census tracts. And USDA does have a map where you can look up census tracts and areas for those food deserts. And that is the official USDA definition of food desert. But the term is used in a lot of other spaces. And so that's the government answer. And I don't know if other panel members may also have an additional response to the definition, but that's how we defined it.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has like another definition, but even when I think over here, this is like, I live in the Garden neighborhood. I live in 850008. We consider this a food desert. When I think about my neighbors and myself having access to like fresh fruits and vegetables, like when we think about like where, you know, how are people able to get the nourishment that they need? What does that mean when you have a lack of transportation? I think that these are like compounded issues, but definitely when I think about food desert, I think about having that access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Again, gleefully as a child, my grandma had greens, turnips, peppers, all of this stuff in the garden. So when Rodney said something about like identity, I was like, yes, identity. Like this is what we grew up in. This is who we are. Even though some of us didn't catch it, Keisha, because Keisha, I didn't catch the green thumb. Like my involvement with the garden is what's bringing it out of me. My family been horticulturalists, right? But I do want to ask others on the panel, and I think I'm gonna come to the Black Southwest Ranchers. When we're talking about this food desert, like this stuff is real. We heard the statistics of 1 in 7, but I want to talk about 1 in 4 children in the state of Arizona who have the probability of going hungry. I want to talk about lack of access to that fresh fruit and vegetable that they receive from the education system, from the school system. And we are in the summer. What is that going to look like? I mean, how do you react when you see a preschooler who's holding a honey bun for breakfast? Because, you know, that's the only thing that the parent has access to due to her socioeconomic status.
Well, in our particular area, there's not a lot at all. We got Walmart, we have Food City left. So really the only grocery store we have is Walmart. And the 99-cent store just came. But what I also found is though, with the statistics of them considering stores, they also do consider like Food City, Family Dollars and Dollar Generals. They kind of throw those in there as food places, and those places don't really have food. So I mean, yeah, they got a can of beans and a bag of pasta for you, but as far as actual food and quality foods, fresh foods, I mean, Walmart, even when I was in the city, it's like you don't go to Walmart for the vegetables. You will go somewhere else to get fruits and vegetables. They provide a lot of good deals on canned foods and stuff like that. But as far as fresh foods, fresh meats, they're really not good. So I mean, we really don't have any access to any decent food. So from where I'm at, the nearest farmer's market will be 30 minutes away. So, and it's kind of hard for people in this area to travel like that. So yeah, do you have anything?
Well, and when he said the Family Dollar and the Dollar Generals, they put those strategically in places to say they're not a food desert. So they count those as saying you have access to food, and then really it's actually like 2 hours to get to an actual grocery store in most places where we are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, thank you so much for that answer. I'm going to move on to the next question. Now, when we think about what are like some of the like barriers to access to healthy food, specifically in communities of color, like we look at like Black and brown communities and we see always a liquor store on the corner. But like, where is like the fresh fruits and vegetables? You know, why is it that we see, and I want to know, like, what are you doing? What is your work doing to help fight some of these barriers in these Black and brown communities, Dion?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that question. It's very important for people to know, yes, this is what it is right now, but there are opportunities for you to grow your own food. So when we founded Project Roots, Bridget and I, and Jessica, our director of ops, we really wanted to make sure we weren't just growing food and giving it away. That is powerful. It is. For someone who doesn't have access to it, it is very powerful to put food in a box that's fresh and locally grown and very good for you, and get it every week. That's a great thing. And that is what we do in our CSA Box project. But what we also do is we have a community garden on an acre of land at Spaces of Opportunity. And a portion of that garden is for particular people who want to come out and say, hey, I want to learn how to grow. Will you teach me how to grow my own food? You know, and if they say, well, I can't afford to pay you anything, but I can help volunteer, or I can offer you a little bit of the food that I grow from the garden. However, the exchange needs to be, we don't want any barriers for someone that wants to come out and grow. And I will say just this week alone, I think I received about 5 requests from the community, 2 African-American women and 3 African-American men who want to grow in our garden simply because of what's going on in the world. They can't afford to buy vegetables in the grocery stores, and they can't find the ones that they really want to eat. That's more culturally appropriate to what they'd like to eat. So we're very excited to offer that. And that's what we do with our work here, is just extend ourselves and our land to the community.
Wow, that's powerful, especially in these times where we are relying on, you know, a lot of our, even some of our education buildings and our faith-based community to provide people with access. Rodney, what is it that you all are doing? And how do you recognize that, you know, why is it Black and Brown communities having lack of access to fresh nutrition? How do you feel as if the work that you all are doing are helping make an impact and providing these resources to families that need it so desperately?
Hopefully you don't mind me adding a little bit to what Dion said first, and then I'll answer the question. So part of what you know, so Dion gave us half of a story of what she is doing, right? Well, one of the things that she's doing that connects to what Keisha mentioned is how we need to have people who are on the growing or the ranching, but also people who are a voice for us across the board. So Dion, in her position in the food bank network, right, now is a voice that can be part of the discussions when we talk about how food is being distributed across. And there's an issue that you were highlighting, the issue of bringing culturally relevant food. Now we have a person on board being part of the discussions about, hey, could we consider having growers grow black-eyed peas for certain communities, because that would be valuable as compared to certain type of beans, right? Hey, what about, so that becomes important. And so this is something that I know Dion, being humble as she is, that's part of her story that she's doing. And so now with her having connections to us, now this is sort of gets to your next point, is how do you do, right? Part of what I'm very, very interested in, connected to my PhD, is I look at how an individual entity, person cannot do everything. So part of what you have to do is to maximize opportunities for collaboration. That's what my PhD does. Look at how you use collaborations. So part of what we do is to try to see, as we do what we do. So part of it, I do have, my wife and I have significant background in growing, but part of it is exactly, hey, how do you connect with Project Roots that have set up a distribution channel where they can reach multiple people? Because we may not have the capacity to host the multiple number of volunteers that they have, right? How do you connect with the Black ranchers? Well, I have dealt with ranchers before, but how do you sort of work with them to make sure that you have a complete set of food items that individuals may need? So a lot of it is building relationships, which is what we've been doing. And one of the things, like to her point, she mentioned about this, right, is we're always interested in how do we help. Part of it comes from my accounting background. How do we help a lot of our minority farmers figure out ways to actually grow capacity and make it more profitable, right? And using minimum resources, because a lot of our farmers are really, they're stretched for resources. So part of it is sort of bringing that accounting background to say, how do you stretch the dollar? How do you utilize the little that you have? What techniques can you actually use? Maybe a limited amount of land to produce more. So, so with that includes different things. We use different strategies. One of them is, for example, starting young people into this space. We have a program. We work with about 6-year-olds to 17-year-olds, working with minority kids, refugee kids, and so forth, helping them to learn gardening skills. Part of a program where it's almost similar to Boys and Girl Scouts, but it's a club that's affiliated to a religious organization. So we're tapping into that, and then we're working with them to help them sort of grow food that's relevant for their family. So these are multiple things that we try to do, but the key element Ado mentioned is being aware of collaborative opportunities.
Love that so much. And I love the fact that you all are on here in collaboration to let them know that Black ranching and farming is alive, well, and kicking in the state of Arizona. So, well, with that said, I'm going to move on to the next question, but food deserts is important. I encourage those of you who have not advocated, so please advocate for access to fresh fruits and vegetables in low-income communities of color, because our children, we know that food is directly connected to health, and we know that there are some generational health issues that some of our communities carry. So making it accessible, and I think also having a point of contact and teaching our people how it is you can grow your own food. So, when I think about what does, access to capital look like for Black people in agriculture? Keisha, you said that, one of the reasons that you wanted to get involved is you wanted to show folks that government can work for you, that, I wanted to get involved because I wanted to be that cross connection and that bridge. What's good? I mean, we have our Black ranchers and farmers are dwindling, and they were impacted by COVID-19 and long-standing systemic barriers prior to that. How are we making sure that we're bringing access and opportunity?
Yeah, it definitely is a long storied history, as it relates to the African American community, and our relationship with the land, period. Just our relationship with land over the past 100, 200 years has been an interesting dynamic. And the government, and these are facts, I'm not speaking out of turn, has played a role in that, okay? So, but I do feel that there have been several attempts by government to try to address some of the wrongs of the past. We still have a long ways to go, but there are several programs that are available. I get asked a lot of questions. Is there a grant for me to get some land? Is it a grant for me to, these are the questions I get asked. Is it a grant for like everything? So, and I'm sure, and I want you to go to the stewards after me, okay? After I talk, you need to go to the stewards. Because I think they can tell a little bit of their story a little bit better, and they've had some experience, and I've been working with them. To kind of help them, it is a tangled web. So that's the thing about the government. And then I'm just talking about the federal. There are opportunities at the state level. There may be local things. There may be things you have to consider in your farming operation locally, like ordinances. And in Arizona, do you have the water rights? There's so many things that need to be thought about where the government, even if you're not participating in a government program, you can't leave the government out. The government is not really completely void of your operation. So there is some level of knowledge that you need to have in working with the government, but there are an array of programs, definitely farm loan programs available from several USDA agencies, primarily Farm Service Agency. In our rural areas, we have an agency called Rural Development, who can help with all kinds of things, even community development things, hospitals and fire departments and things. There are risk management and insurance opportunities through USDA and through our partners. All of those things are available. And we have, in my agency particularly, so I'm in the environmental side of things, so Natural Resources Conservation Services, and we cover the every inch of the United States of America. So there is an office near you somewhere, a local office, and I think we just don't know. And the other secret hidden gem that everybody on this panel knows about them, but I think the best secret is the Cooperative Extension Service. Like, I don't know if our community really knows all the what we know is we know 4-H. We know about 4-H, but 4-H is the Cooperative Extension Service, and they are just a plethora of technical resources, all kinds of, any question you can take. I always tell people, people call me all the time, something's wrong with my leaf. I don't know. Did you take a piece of it into extension, put it in a bag, take it to extension, and I almost guarantee you somebody in that office knows exactly what's wrong with your plant. So I don't know if we know that those free resources are available in almost every county in the United States of America. So I think it's just, because we sometimes have a trust issue with the government, we don't know how it works. But there are an array of opportunities. But I think the stewards may be better in talking about their experience, and they can be honest, and I'm okay with them being honest. It hasn't always been a great experience. So I'll bounce it over to them if you don't mind, Chanel.
Oh, that's the tee up. Let's go. What we got? Let's go, stewards.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Keisha. And Keisha has been very solid, coming from a different part of the USDA as opposed to the FSA, and which is where basically, all right, I'll go ahead and break down finances. I'll break down how it affects Black people and like the way this whole thing goes in my views and my eyes. For one, the only way you're gonna get new farms on the ground is through loans. Bottom line, they're not gonna give you land, well, ranch, everything through a grant. Not happening. They have some rural development programs right now that they have that'll be like 20% or the 90% guaranteed loans where you can do more so. But as far as getting an overall thing, it's gonna be a loan. That's how you're gonna get a new farm. That's how new farms and ranches get purchased. That's gonna come through the FSA. Now, with the Farm Service Agency, with the FSA, we have our struggles. All right, so there's things that I've learned with the FSA where when we hear, the 42% denial, the 9%, and then like, how does this happen?
So 42% of Black people are denied, while 9% of white people are denied.
For direct farm ownership loans. Now, with that being said, me going through the process, I'm supposed to be closing on a farm hopefully in the next 45 to 60 days. That's, if everything goes through. But I got denied on that loan twice. And I had to go to the national office twice. So when you're dealing with them, if you don't get the right representative on the phone or you're not in the right area, there's things that they can, let's just say, not do that prevent you from getting a loan, which are right down the lines of the guidelines of the handbook. So like, for instance, if you're gonna get a loan with the Farm Service Agency, you create a business plan. They put your living expenses in your business. They include that. No other lender does that. Nothing you've ever heard of said put your kids, toiletries and underwear and all that into your business plan. But the FSA does that. So with that being said, after I submitted my whole business plan, I got slapped with $30,000 of expenses that he never told me he was going to put on there. So I can't realistically make a business plan like that. So I had to respond and had to create different scenarios, and I had to prove to them that what happened and how it happened wasn't right. So long story short, that's kind of where that came from. Grants, I think that like the grants that are being offered with our names attached to them, all route us to urban, which all prevents us from actually growing overall as a footprint. My number one example I like to use, is you've heard me before, you always hear it, I always say, if we take and give 40,000 Black people 1 acre of land, and we give them each a farm number, we are no longer 1.4% of the farmers and ranchers, right? But if King's Ranch has 40,000 acres, that's one ranch. So are we really more than 1%? Did we really increase? No, we pencil whip the numbers and we put people on small parcels and had them grow small amounts of food, just enough to survive or just enough to say we did something. We didn't do anything to create a footprint. Ultimately, yeah, urban garden is very important. It's another resource. It's closer. There's less distribution. There's less cold storage needed. There's a ton of things less. There's a lot of experience that can be grown. There's a lot of ways to show people about gardening. They live in apartments and other places. With that being said, if we never say the word rural, how you gonna get a 500-acre farm or ranch? It ain't happening in Phoenix. People can't buy 1 acre in Phoenix. So how are we gonna develop mass-produced products without, I mean, yeah, this vertical gardening and stuff, but then the facilities take a lot of money to get there. So being rural is traditionally where farming and ranching come from. And we get pushed into the cities, into the control zones, as I like to say, where all the controls are on there. So I mean, even to the point of where we talk about the honey bun and the food. All right, so let's break that down outside of a food aspect. That's going to come from the fact that Black people, Mexican people, Hispanic people, we do not have 2-parent households with 1 income supporting. What does that do? That gives mom or dad or whomever time to prepare food. Time to go to the grocery store, time to go to the farmer's market. What do we want? Oh, you know what I mean? What does a parent that lives by themselves with 4 kids got to do to get them kids to school? Grab, go. I got to work. I got a second job. We got to pick this up. So to increase on that and to increase that as growers and stuff, we need to start finding ways to have more value added products from our products, which we know are good. So they have grab and grow products that we create for fresh products that aren't necessarily, you know, thrown with all the soys and all the chemicals and stuff to make them grab and go. So, but it's far back to the financial part. Yeah, it's a matter.
Well, also with the 90% back loan, okay, you need to find a lender to do that, okay? And you can do a food facility, you can do vertical operations. This is through rural development, but they give you BS reasons for denying you. You know what I mean? So it's like the access to capital matters. It matters. If we're just always going to be denied access to capital, then we're not going to have operations.
So what she's touching on with that is, so I'm in the process of trying to buy a processing facility. Okay, so rural development's got a great loan. It's 90% guaranteed to back it, and the processing center would have the equity in it, so that the bank that I've only dealt with the one bank so far, but it doesn't seem like that's going to work. The bank had more than enough to have 20% equity into the property, so that's 110% right there. They said the historic cash flows, because the operation is not running, is they couldn't do it, even though they're not going to lose anything no matter what. They didn't want to give me the personally give me the opportunity. So now I'm gonna have to scrabble around and find a bank that believes in me as a person, even though the government's backing me. You know, they say, oh, new facilities, infrastructure, build one. Like, there's no historic numbers on something you just built.
You're buying a building, not a business. You know, when you're buying a building, you're just buying the building.
So I mean, it's finding people that's gonna believe in us, you know, and finding, again, if you want to really make a change, it's not going to come through grants. I mean, each and every one of us here can say, okay, let's go, and we're all going to apply for this grant. Only one person going to raise their hand at the end of the day. With a loan, we can all raise our hand. It's the difference between getting awarded and approved. Being approved is what we need. Approval letters and getting properties and getting infrastructure and building the things as people. And I mean, it is co-ops, yes, but it's also individuals and changing the mindsets of people that there is financial gains in this area. There are ways to make money. The biggest part of it is, you know, with this FSA loan, $375,000 costs you about $1,500 a month through that program, right? Who's not paying $1,500 a month on rent on this phone? But guess what? That property also got wells, and this gives me the ability to make tons of money. So much money can be made off that infrastructure that I have. So getting infrastructure and getting into that is huge. So finding avenues and trying to go to more solid ways to get us actual funding that is true funding that you can write a business plan on, that you can actually bank on. We have to take ourselves, when it comes to funding, we have to take ourselves out of the agriculture world, because the agriculture world doesn't like us. In business world, you don't get grants like that. You don't get subsidies. You don't get help. If you want to go slaying carpets, they're going to say, good luck, have fun. They're not going to say, well, we got you. We support you. You say you're growing corn and soy. We got you. There's a program. See, these things all have programs. It's almost a welfare system that agricultural growers go into, unless they're the big time. And even there, they get subsidies. So for us to find funding and get loans and stuff that are, you know, with business plans and educating ourselves on the business aspects, I think is the biggest things that'll make a change. I've probably been going on too for long, so I'll stop.
No, we needed to hear that. And I think it's important that people understand those statistics. And I'm going to ask Rachel, if you could drop those statistics in the chat. when you talked about how many, what are the denial rate between Black farmers and white farmers, I think that that's something that we also need to kind of question the system and lean into to understand why are those chronic, it sounds like a chronic disparity. Why does this chronic disparity exist?
Man. I'm sorry. And the biggest thing I forgot to say, and I always like to say this about the FSA, that's the place you get farms and ranches. For instance, my kids, they all live on that farm, right? They all work that farm. They all getting experience, right? When they're 18, guess what they're eligible for? A farm loan. They can go have a whole farm up to $600,000. The business plan will be there because I got a business that they're going with. The experience is there. Then they get that $400,000 infrastructure loan. Did you want to say something, Keisha?
They're actually eligible before that. There is a youth loan that Farm Service Agency has for young people that want to start a business. For example, like 4-H kids want to show their prize sow.
Yeah.
A lot of those students go to FSA and may get a youth loan to buy that initially and then feed it over time. And then when they sell that sow at the at the fair or wherever, then they can pay back the loan. So there are a lot of opportunities. And let me just say this, I don't work for FSA. I have to start that. So I work for another agency, but I know there's programs well enough that I can tell you the program is there. I probably can't tell you the ins and outs of this is how you apply and all that kind of stuff, but I know that that resource is there. And although we may not have had a good track record, especially in the past, USDA is definitely making concerted efforts to try to be better from the very, very top all the way down to our local offices. And sometimes there's bumps in the road along the way, but I don't want people to be discouraged. And I can't say enough about the stewards because they didn't get discouraged and they didn't give up. And as a result, now they got the loan and they're getting ready to purchase the acres that they need to expand from 10 acres to something much bigger. So
thank you both so much. I'm going to segue right into the next question to keep this conversation moving. What might be some potential ways for people who may not live in food deserts, but how can they help bridge the gap to resources in our underserved communities? Dion. No, I'm going to go, Dion, and then I'll go to Rodney.
Yes, absolutely. In regards to people on the outside looking in that want to help, tell people about what we're doing. Let people know, before you go to the grocery store, can you just look in your neighborhood and see if there's a farmer's market? And if so, can you get your produce from there? Or if you're fine financially and you just want to donate, or if you're a gardener and you have a lot of excess food that you can't eat, my mom, she's like, I got all these cucumbers. Mama, put them in the food bank, There's so many different ways that you can really contribute besides financially. And I just want to say one thing real tiny thing quick, that program that we put in there, the Friends of the Farm program, that's a program that we're managing by the state of Arizona with the help of the USDA. And we're hoping on funds from the LFPA. I'm really hoping, I'm just throwing it out there, Keisha, if you got any pool, we're waiting on funds from the LFPA grant. But once we get that, we're hoping on anything between $1.8 million to 1.5 million coming like in August, on top of $500,000 from the governor's office. So there is funding there. One more thing, we do prepayment. So if you're like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but I don't have anything to grow and I don't have the money to buy the seed or the chickens or whatever, let us know. We will pay up to 35% of whatever agreement we come to support you. We want to see you win. There's no red tape. We deal with one person. And it's my job to make sure that we're being equitable, intentional, and mindful of the funds that we get from the USDA and the governor's office. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
Yes, Dion, come through with the resources. We need them. Rodney, what are the resources? How can people stand in the gap that's on this call that may not be suffering from a food desert, but how can they support? You're on mute.
Yeah. The exciting thing about this space is these multiple places where people can come in with their skill sets. So for example, a number of us, people in this space are either farmers or nonprofits who could use, for example, volunteers on different stages, right? So for example, you could have the farming aspect, the marketing aspect, the accounting aspect, the business aspect. So I'll give you an example. Right now, for example, as we move our small farmers to become established farmers, there is a space, for example, people who are lawyers to help our farmers craft, for example, a lease of the land, right? But they may be good at growing, but they may not have the expertise to figure that out. There's issues, for example, figuring out, hey, one of the things that I found out trying to do at least on my own, even just a bit of knowledge to figure out what are the insurance companies that still provide insurance for farmers. You'll be shocked. I'm an accountant. I used to work in corporate America. It was so hard for even me to figure this out, right? And so when State Farm, oh, I see farm on the name, think they do something, they don't do anything. We are farmers, you think they'll do something, not. So then you use, there are people with different skills for certain doors that our farmers could really use. And then there's multiple other ways people could provide that are let me call it the easy way, funding wise, right? So for example, $1,000 worth of compost will cover a lot of space. You know what I mean? Like farming is what I consider a very low, it has got low barriers of entry when it comes to inputs, right? But those inputs will go so far, right? And so if you were to provide, a farmer $1,000 worth of compost, this would be like a truckload. And that itself, when the farmer has the right skill set, could do a crop where they can actually make $50,000 or $100,000 just using that $1,000, right? And so there's different ways whether it's just your time or the skill sets that somebody has in marketing, setting up somebody's websites, all of these, there are multiple ways where people come, right? And one thing that I'll mention as well is we are struggling to find skill sets. And it's an issue across the board, whether it's white farmers, black farmers, whatever. But some of the people who may be on this chat may have their kids, their nephews and nieces that have a passion and interest in gardening. So helping them connect to farmers to start working and learning and helping in this space would do wonders because we don't have the staff. Yeah.
Good. That's good. They eating that up. Y'all taking notes? We telling you along the way. You don't have to wait till the end to find out how to get involved and how to make a difference and how to stand in the gap. This is it all intersects in our conversations, which is going to lead me to the next question, right? Like we talked about the pandemic, but with the pandemic going on, it's been an increase of Black community interested in gardening and farming. Shout out, to even some of the folks who are not on this call, who I see across the valley getting busy at spaces and providing those free food boxes and fresh nutrition to our communities. How can we continue to change the narrative around our relationship, things that we've been rooted in community with healthy food? And I'll start that question out to be answered. I'll go over to Rachel and James.
How we're changing the narrative is why we started our nonprofit, People First Global Food and Land Reclamation Foundation. And we actually help people get onto land. One of the biggest things that we see is people get caught in sharecropping. And then even when we had our 10 acres, people would continuously say, well, you can come farm on my land. Well, no, we have our land and we're going to farm on our land. Okay. So it's a thing because you're building the value for somebody else's land. Do you know what I mean? It's free labor. It's a lot of things because, and then it's like, then you're getting the farm number on their land. Okay. And building that value right there. It's like, it's a lot to think independently and change that mindset. Most people, they kind of just, we're in this mindset where we do what we're told, but we don't think about what hasn't been done or what we've never seen, and if we never, like you said at the beginning about why it's so important to see the Black farmers and the minority farmers, because if we don't see it, then it doesn't exist. So we have to show people that we can be successful. We can have vertical operations. Rodney can have his whole Edenic gardens. You know what I mean? Dion can have a power position in the food banks. You know what I mean? Keisha can have a role in the government. And that is huge because one thing that Keisha mentioned at the beginning, and I'm really glad she did, why she got her job in the government is there is money in agriculture working. There are positions in agriculture when you go to school for agriculture, and there is free college for minorities in agriculture, and they don't talk about it on the West Coast. So one thing we've been trying to get with Prairie View A&M, so the Black Land Grant University that's closest to us out of Texas, because we want to share that these programs are available. We have youth going and they say, oh, I got accepted to ASU, but they're paying full tuition for agriculture there. You know what I mean? Where they can go for free to all of these other universities. But like Keisha had told us before, there's a shortage of qualified individuals in agriculture who've been trained on soil, who've been trained on sustainability. You know, these are things that she needs. And if we start teaching the kids and that these are viable routes for the future, then they'll have the positions. You know what I mean? It's bringing them up and pushing this forward and not losing hope along the way. You know, but changing the narrative, that's all we do. You know, we just came back from Georgia today. We just landed today from White Oak Pastures, which was a plantation, you know, and people told us like that Black people don't go there. And so we said, well, we're going to be some of the first ones to go. So we went, and it was amazing. And surprisingly, another group, a couple of Black people were there. And it was just a big surprise. And, you know, it was life-changing, this trip.
Yeah. Like to add on to like that, don't mind me, I always talk about the business aspect, you know what I mean? Because I think it's very underrated. And what we're doing, first of all, most people just push us to the side when we talk about like whatever. But those two being there and us being there, and we know one other farmer that is interested in going as far as to processing. It's like, it's always talked about grow, but you know how much money is in processing? You know how much money is in these food hubs? If it's like this, what we do, because we only educated to do so, is to go out, get a product, and then hit a farmer's market. That's not what they do. That's not what they do. Who's processing the food? Who's doing all those other things? They are. So again, that footprint. And what Keisha said, it's more to it than just the growth. You know, the producing, the distribution, the cold storage. There's tons of ways that we can get into this industry and make a change with who we are. And I mean, regardless, my personal feeling is in the future, you're either in ag or tech, or you're gonna get bumped off. So like I said, you're never gonna stop the ag, man. That's why I'm here. I don't want to go into tech, and I know you'll never stop ag. If you make $1 billion, you got to go see the ag man. So you go ahead.
But the last thing is that's a regenerative farm, and they're one of the biggest regenerative farms in the country. So to go with Keisha with conservation, you know, it's changing the mindset from what we've always done and what we've always seen others do, where we just mimic that. You know, it's like this. I've never seen happier animals. I felt like I was in a zoo almost. Okay, it was so gorgeous, so humane. Everything. It didn't look like there was 400 birds right there. They just were all just so peaceful, just chilling, you know, like all, and learning the rotational grazing, you know, how we can do that, how we move the wire, how we can reuse the water, how we can reuse the wastewater on the desert land and regenerate the desert. You know, these are things that we have to do. These are things that we have to do, not just that I want to do, but that we have to do because the climate crisis is here. You know what I mean? Changing the water conservation, when we make the grasslands there, it's going to attract the rain. It's going to attract more water staying there, making more roots. When we grow alfalfa, that will attract more water to stay here and not leave Arizona. So these are things that we're trying to implement. And then also we sell land to people. Not our land. I work with somebody privately to sell and help people get onto land. So a lot of people don't want to go through the USDA or through loans or things like that. So I help them find viable ways to get started in whatever way. But the sovereignty means not doing my way, it's your way. You know what I mean? It's what you want to do. And that's why I think building up individuals will help build us as a group.
Beautiful. Woo, y'all had a whole lot to just, woo. Dion, I need you to answer this question. I need you to help us understand with the pandemic, with everything that's going on, how can we change the narrative about Black people in our relationship with healthy food? Because people don't know that we were given pig intestines and given scraps off of the colonizers' plate, and we had to make miracles to be able to feed our children.
I think we have to go back to remembering that we are producers ourselves as people. And if you don't think you can grow or produce something and you are of color, you have another thing coming. And you have so many resources and so many things like the exchange. We use the University of Arizona Exchange, we use their calendar. We're in a desert, but yet we can grow food here. And I am not a green thumb, by the way. I do stay behind the computer. but you better believe I got some basil growing in my backyard right now. You know, it's just important to try one thing, pick one item. And I'll give you an example. I picked an item like basil because I was tired of paying for it in the store. Pick something that's expensive in the store that you don't want to buy and try to plant that one seed. I was also on Facebook this morning. I'm a part of a Black group farmer Facebook, and this lady had an armful of cucumbers, and she said, after several attempts, I got my harvest. And so I just want to empower and encourage all of us to know that you can grow your own food. You can provide for your family. You don't have to depend on others, grocery stores, the government, all these wonderful programs that we've shared with you. Yes, they're there and they are resources, and take advantage if you'd like to. But if you don't do nothing else from this webinar, consider, be open-minded to, and entertain the thought of growing your own food.
That's powerful. And that's what's making me think more and more about like some of the conservation issues. Like, what are some of the conservation issues that we should be aware of that people are not really talking about, Rodney?
Okay, so there's multiple conservation issues that I can think of that people can think about. One of them is, for example, we are losing, and you know, Keisha would certainly know more about this, but I would say this, and I then she can mark me up or down, right? But one of the things is that we are losing quality soil, right? We're losing quality soil big time. And this is something, and I'll share this, that this is something that even people can do on their homes, right? And so one of the things is that whilst we're losing quality soil on one end, so that's a conservation issue. On the other side is that we're packing our landfills, filling them up with yard waste and all sorts of things, right? Those are two issues that we can bring together, essentially when it comes to the wood chips, leaves, and so forth and so on, particularly for the type of demographic we're talking about. I have grown collard greens using, I would go through the neighborhood and grab a lot of the tree leaves that most people throw in bags so that they're taken away to the landfill. And I have grown some of the best collard greens that you can have. In the process, I was rebuilding the soil, right? But we developed a garden pretty much 24th Street and Thomas that became the talk of the neighborhood and became almost like a center of attraction. But what we were doing there was something we can do in a larger scale, where we can think about our land, where we're losing quality land, right? But we can also divert a lot of waste products that we're sending to the landfill. So, you know, even at spaces of opportunity, with this thing, right? What they're doing is that a lot of the yard waste companies, right? They're telling them to come in and spread their wood chip on the roads, primarily to reduce the dust effect. But it's becoming a passive composting approach that some of us are now using, that, taking that and spreading out through our soil to actually rebuild that soil. And we're producing, and I actually owe Dion quite a lot of tomatoes that I'm growing off of this whole process, right? And so a lot of these are certain conservation efforts that even anyone can do, either from a very small scale at the back of a home. And you can think about how you can now bring in even restaurants and other people to participate in something like that. So that's one. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that with the water, right? Water is becoming a big issue, right? I remember going to the Central Arizona Project about 5 years ago, and they assured me that no, water is gonna be good. But now we're hearing the same folks saying, whoa, we're in trouble, right? And so part of it, what's happening is people are starting to adopt different type of technologies to help conserve water, including drip irrigation systems that basically let very little amount of water in your agriculture, but you don't let it sip too deep, but it's going to conserve the amount of water that you're using, and it's not going to run off, it's not going to wash away your soil. But at the same time, there's also now methods to try to do solar panels. So what do they call agrovoltaics? You use that and sort of make that as a shade structure to reduce your water loss. Whilst you're shading your plants, you extend your season. So you're doing what they call a food water energy nexus, where you're generating energy, growing food, and reducing water loss. So these are multiple different things that people are tapping into. And we're learning more from people like Keisha so that we can adopt those, whether from a large farm scale or even a backyard garden scale.
Powerful. You're getting all praises for bringing this up in the chat, Rodney. So Thank you so very much for doing so. So, my next question is like, the country is currently experiencing a food shortage. How is your work being affected, and how does gardening and farming alleviate some of those issues that we're experiencing? Dion?
Now more than ever, we're receiving much more requests of CSA boxes. People just can't afford to buy groceries in the grocery store. We took a leave during the farmers market for the summer. It's just too hot, and we grow for the community. We don't grow for profit. So like my good friend Rodney down there, he's growing to take care of his family, and this is what he does. This is what he does for a living. What we do here is we grow food, and if someone needs it, we either give it away or we put it through a program that they can get it for free. And we're just starting to get more requests for those CSA boxes now, which is wonderful. That's what we're here for. It's one of the things we do as far as being busy in that regard. From the Food Bank Network, we're very busy. I mean, we're sending truckloads and truckloads to all different food banks from Tucson, Yuma, Flagstaff. There's a big fire up in Flagstaff. You all know about that. We just sent 2 big semis of food up there this morning. So everything's just really, depending on what's going on in the world, food is always at the bottom of it, including crime. I just met with a senator talking about how people, don't have access to food, so they feel led to commit a crime to go buy that or to go steal that food away. And I didn't even think about that. That was mind blowing, And so I just think food is at the bottom of every underlying issue, and we just need to be more aware of it, talk about it, and know what our resources are.
Good. Keisha, what are you seeing from your angle, from your end? Like, this is like a big deal. Like, it's like the pandemic. They're like, you only can get 2 pieces of meat. What's going on? And we're finding all of these shortages. Like, what does this mean to us? I mean, we don't want to experience famine in this country.
Yes, I got to take opportunity to get my commercial in. So, Rodney talked about, as we talked about the conservation, this ties all into all of the pieces. So, Rodney, man, we might need to talk. I might have a job for you, my friend. So, conservation, I can't say enough about where we are. We live in Arizona. He talked about the water shortage, and I think as a community, I don't know if we're paying attention, because sometimes it gets, when you look at like the reports from Central Arizona Project or Arizona Department of Water Resources, a lot of times I share them on my Facebook. I get 1 like, 2 likes, and so I think sometimes it may be it's highly technical. They're talking about acre feet of this and this tier 1 shortage and tier 2 and all of these kind of things, and we're like, whatever, as long as the faucet still comes on, I'm okay. We need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to these issues. But as a community, we have a shortage more of, not necessarily, we don't have a shortage of desire to be in the space, but I think we need to be more interested in how we expand our knowledge base, right? So do I need to know everything about, I'm in agriculture, I have a degree in it, but I don't know everything about agriculture because it's so multifaceted, and I'm planting soil science. So the animal stuff is I got to work harder on that side of things. Because I'm in government, I'm not as engaged with the marketing and the business side of things. So sometimes I have to lean on someone else. I have an economist on staff that helps us with those kind of things. So it's so many different facets of what we could be doing in the realm of agriculture. And I know I'm not answering your question, Chanel, because I'm talking about something that I think is more important. And I think I'm sorry, but I think our people hear agriculture, right? So guess what they hear? They hear cotton. That's all they hear. That's what they hear. They hear cotton. And for whatever reason, we are offended by the word cotton, even though we all probably got it on right now. But there are so many things that we should be steering our children. This whole thing with STEM, agriculture is STEM. I hire engineers, I hire geologists, economists, people that do math and science. So it's not a foreign, far off thing that you just got to have a green thumb to know how to do. And so I just want to put that commercial in. And for those that are interested, because we got a lot of the pandemic, a lot of people got interested in agriculture. And I'm very excited about that. But a lot of us are very green. And so you don't want to just jump in and I'm going to take all my life savings and go 500 acres, put some seeds out, put some water out there, and I'm gonna pray. That is not the way. We can't do that. So you got to educate yourself. Maybe get engaged with the master gardeners. Go be a master gardener with a cooperative extension and learn how to do a lot of this stuff. Get to know Rodney, Dion, the stewards, the network. Can I talk about the network? We need a network that we can all be in communication with each other. So I think I'm trying to get it back to answer your question. So I guess my answer to that, Chanel, is I'm very excited that people are interested in agriculture. The interest is, it's blowing up in our community, but we have to educate ourselves, and instead of just jumping out and just saying, I'm gonna go out and do this thing. Dion said, grow some basil, grow one thing and really get to learn it. Or maybe you're not a grower. Maybe you want to be an economist, an agricultural economist, or maybe you want to do something in the marketing side of things. It's a whole realm out there. The world is ours. Go get it.
Okay, Keisha, go get it. Educate ourselves and then find our ways to get involved. And there's ways in gardening classes. I believe that the Desert Botanical Garden also has available. We are tapped into spaces of opportunity, but utilize the resources that's being shared with you all today from our panelists and from our experts. So like, I'm gonna go to, Rachel. I'm gonna come back to you, Rachel and James, and I'm gonna ask you, like, what is it? We are experiencing this food shortage right now. So how is your work being affected with some of these issues that we're experiencing? Because I know at the grocery store, honey, I know how I'm getting treated and how I feel about paying extra. I think I went to a store in West Hollywood, a grocery store, and I tried to buy some cherries and it was like $21.99. I was like, what? So how, so go ahead and unmute so we can hear you all answer that. But thank you.
So the biggest way it's going to affect us is through hay. So the prices of hay have risen. So there's a lot. So like, at the end of the day, agriculture going to start with, yes, there's the plant, the water, the vegetable, there's the animal. Okay, nobody likes to talk about the animal. The animal is part of agriculture. The animal regenerates the soil. The animal puts nitrogen and nutrients in the soil. If you just farming, you still need a goat or a sheep. They have very quick fertilizer for you. So the price of fertilizer is going up. Get an animal. You got fertilizer. There's just more to it than just simply, costs are up. As far as what you said about those cherries in the grocery store, I feel the way everything is going is creating nothing but opportunity. I feel everything's an opportunity. There's no such thing as just a problem. You know what I mean? In any depression, there's some people who came out great. Okay, there's people who said, "Oh, we're in a depression," and they went depressed. And there's people who say, "Oh, wow, that's happening. Let me go ahead and do this and fix that problem. Let me do this and fix that problem." So you say the price of cherries, for instance, were $21 in the grocery store. You remember how much people were complaining about paying the farmer $21 for the cherries? They're not going to complain about paying the farmer $21 for cherries at the market no more. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, the ribeyes costing $20. They're not going to might be mad at paying the farmer $18. We got to let these prices continue to go up for the small people. They're going to price themselves out the box. And if we can get enough people coming up behind, we're going to be able to come up and change the whole thing. That's why when I say for taking us, and it's important right now that we start going and transitioning to what our future is going to be. You're not going to go to the grocery store. So where are you going to get your food from? It's going to be us.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it, then you're going to be getting it from the laboratory. If you're cool with the lab meats and lab foods, that's just cancer. That's just cancer coming and other things coming. So again, it's so much opportunity right now. It's so much opportunity. If somebody's making a big shift, they're leaving weaknesses and vulnerabilities and what they used to do.
And also it's looking at the weaknesses that you see and figuring out how you can make them stronger. So vertical integration, okay, making sure that you can do everything start to finish. So that's why your own processing, getting your own product to market, figuring out everything that you need from start to finish to get your thing to grow, whatever it is. And then also touching on the soil health and the fertilizers with what we learned is that we're able to take the blood, we're able to take the bone, and we're able to take the waste and use that on our grazed land and grasses, to grow the grasses on our future property. So we're really excited about that. We learned about the soil health and tested it, and being able to determine what is good, what is not good, and how it changes things. So it's like, if we start taking hold of that and control, I think that's the major factor. And even if you don't have the means, putting it down on paper, figuring it out is the first step, because then it's creating that plan, because the money is gonna happen. You can find it. We're gonna find it. Okay.
Okay, find the money. Where the money reside, where the money reside. So our last question is, please provide some insight to our audience on ways that they can join your movement. Dion.
Absolutely. You can follow us on social media. We're project_roots AZ. We also put our website. Thank you, Kavina, for putting our website, all of our websites in there. Definitely just get involved. Find out what we're up to, what we're doing. If we're quiet, it's probably because it's hot, or we need volunteers, we need help, So just think about it that way. I would say also tell people about us, all of us. Southwest Blade, you need some meat, Southwest. You need the best collard greens I've ever tasted, call Rodney. If you want to learn how to grow your own food, call us and Rodney. He's doing the same thing. If you want to learn how to be a rancher, I know Southwest, they are so passionate. You have at least this set of people, even Darren not being here, to support you, to be here for you. We'll take time to meet with you and guide you. We'll tell you what we did that didn't work, and we'll try to show you some things that did. So I would just say, we're here for you. Somebody was here for us. We're going to do the same for you. We're just going to keep building this thing.
Rodney, how can people join your movement and stay involved? And I think Darren did pop in. Darren, I think I see him watching. Thank you. I know you're a busy man. We know you're busy. Rodney, please jump in. How can people support your movement? How can they support what you're doing?
So multiple ways, and Dion, thank you, Dion, for mentioning that. So obviously I shared my email through the chat, so feel free to reach out to me. I always tell people, don't be scared to keep sending an email if I don't respond immediately, because sometimes my email blows up. If you're interested in growing, obviously there's work that we do at Spaces of Opportunity, whether we do it ourselves or we could connect it with our other partners, depending on what you want to do. Right. We have our own 5-acre farm that we're also working to develop what we're calling a sustainable farmers hub, training a new set of minority farmers into sustainable ways of farming. If somebody wants to grow to a larger scale, there's a project we're doing in Surprise so that we can help people tap into that. But there's also other ways with different skills in terms of research. Somebody can just come in and just watch and study the space and help us do things better. Right, we're all really, really legitimately interested in any type of critique that will help us do things better, whether it's the farming side, business side, and so forth and so on. We want mentors, we want advisors, we want all of these. So there's multiple ways you can collaborate.
Thank you, Mr. Rodney. Southwest Ranchers, how can we join the movement? What can people do to support?
Well, as far as support, we're pretty much on the rural side of it. So there's if you want to hang out in the rural areas and become rural, you want to get out of the city, that's what we're here for. To show people that city people can leave. You know what I mean? Like say I'm a city boy, through and through. I grew up in Oakland, California. So I never had livestock until I bought livestock. And just so y'all know, livestock's easier than dogs if you're scared. It's a lot easier than dogs, okay? Your goat, your sheep, your cow, they don't need you. They need the food, they need the water, they don't need you. Your dog needs you. Your dog is a lot of work. They're not that way. So farm animals are not scary. They're not really intimidating. They're very domesticated for the most part. You get one here and there, but that's just like any other animal. As far as what we do, as far as how they can help, basically just getting involved personally. Independence is what we need. We need to stop depending on systems. We need to stop depending on other people. We need to stop falling into place. We need to stop just, the narratives. We need to go against narratives sometimes. It's big to go against them, because if the narrative is going to funnel us in a direction, and we've already been funneled and we know how that goes. So just making a change, and like going to Rodney, you can end up coming to me. All right, that's my whole goal. I want somebody call Dion and say, hey, Dion, I want to get into this. And then I want her to send them to Rodney, and Rodney be like, yo, you doing this good. You need land. And then I want Rodney to send them to me. And then I'm like, oh, we got land. Because out here where I'm at, I got a worldwide commodities expert. I got a lot of resources to mass produce. And, you know, I mean, my focus is and the price of land is only $1,000 an acre.
So look, we got your contact information. We're going to reach out to Black Southwest ranchers. I want to kick it on over to Keisha. Keisha, how can we support the movement, the work that you're doing in government for government to connect with community?
Well, we need more people that look like us in the positions. So, and I'm hiring all the time, but guess what? We don't have enough of our young people going to get the right degrees. So USDA has a scholarship. This will be my second commercial. USDA has a scholarship for students to go to the HBCU land grant institutions. I'm a recipient of one of those similar scholarships. Okay. And I picked, you know, I'm part of the selection process here in Arizona. We've looked at it for 10 years.
Good.
This year was the first year we had an Arizona applicant. I picked that young man.
What?
Right. So we need more applications from Arizona. It's very difficult for me to go to Georgia and get somebody and convince their mama, because y'all know how we are, to let them come to Arizona for the summer or even for a permanent. We got to start growing some of our own right here. And so if we can get more, I would like to see more Arizona students applying for the USDA scholarship. I would like to see more Arizona folks applying for our jobs. And from there, we can have more representation, not just here in Arizona, but even it can spread across the country. So I'll put our website. If you have a farm and you need conservation support, there is our website. You can find the field office that's located closest to you, and we come to you to help you with your conservation needs.
And real quick, before I just turn it off, can we just smile real quick for a group photo? One. Okay. Y'all got y'all thing in the thing. Y'all look cute. Okay. 1, 2, say it in Black. Kavina, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you, to our wonderful esteemed panelists, to everyone. That was over 70 of you that joined us in the afternoon on a Wednesday as we prepare to kick off, celebrate, and commemorate Juneteenth. We appreciate you.
Again, thank you all to all the panelists for joining us today. It was a great conversation. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to our audience that joined us today. We have a survey in the link. We have all the contact information for all the panelists. We couldn't get to questions, but if you do have some questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us on this screen right now. So again, thank you, and thank you for joining us, and thank you, panel. Have a good day, everyone.
Happy Juneteenth.